the House. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Just before I call the next member, to advise the House that this is a split call and members will be given a warning bell with 1 minute remaining. I recognise the Honourable Member Sue Moroney.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker.
Tēnā koe.
Seems I'm going to be talking about milk quite a lot this week in Parliament. Tomorrow I'll be speaking about breast milk, but for today I'm talking about the milk that keeps this country strong. And yes, that probably is breast milk as well. But with regard to this bill, we're talking about the future of our dairy industry. And the future of our dairy industry is something that we must take very seriously indeed. And I'm very concerned, Mr Speaker, to hear the reports, although I was not on the Select Committee, to hear the reports of how rushed this legislation was through Select Committee. Because, after all, this is the industry that is the backbone of our nation. It ought to have been taken seriously by all sides of the House. And for Labor's part, we feel very strongly about the hugely successful cooperative model that has actually seen Fonterra become one of our few international success stories. Because in New Zealand, we don't have many companies that can actually compete on the international market in the way that Fonterra does. And it's a huge success story for something different from the corporate model, the cooperative model, a model that has been owned by, successfully now for many, many decades, by New Zealand farmers. And I guess the rest of us also feel that we have shares in Fonterra because it's such an important part of our economy. It's such an important part of everything that happens in our country. And for those of us who live in the provinces, and I'm from the Waikato area, it's such an important part of how our local economies operate. So this should not have been a piece of legislation that should ever have been rushed through Select Committee. I believe that it was rushed through for entirely the wrong reasons. There was a bit of a panic going on. There was a panic going on from government, and haven't we seen that? That's a bit of a theme for this government as they panic their way through a number of political mishaps at the moment, and I sincerely hope that this does not become another one of those political mishaps. But it certainly could easily do so, because this bill does open up the opportunity for our successful flagship cooperative model company to have shares sold off overseas. And again, it's a continuing theme that is happening through this government, as we're also dealing with the state asset sales issue at the moment as well. So there are themes running through. And I know that Fonterra was deeply concerned about this issue, because I did talk about farmers and others of us as if I don't fall into that category myself, but I actually did field a phone call from Fonterra as they got a bit panicked about how the vote might go on trading amongst farmers. I did actually receive one of those phone calls at home as a Fonterra shareholder to ask me to participate in a survey in the days leading up to that. I think Shane Ardern looks like he may have participated in such a survey as well. Perhaps there was a high proportion of MPs who actually got asked the survey questions from Fonterra. But the phones were running red hot. Phones were running red hot as Fonterra did urgent surveys to try and find out whether they would get that slim majority that they in fact ended up getting to get this through, this trading against farmers. But it is very controversial, and I know that there are deeply held concerns within the farming community and more broadly the agricultural community actually, and I say that farmers are part of that, but the entire community who relies on this very important industry as the backbone of what we do in this country. The concern about the lack of protection in this bill to ensure that we actually do keep that very successful and very important cooperative model. Mr Speaker, I'm very proud to say that I am in opposition with my Labour colleagues against this bill. I think it does actually have too many risks. We have a very successful model in Fonterra. I want to keep that very successful model in place. It has been sustainable in the future. I don't accept the arguments coming from the government, and I oppose the third reading of this bill.
I call the honourable member Eugenie Sage.